wait, there it is. I got my recording in progress notification. So good. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad to see returning faces and new faces. We had a really good conversation last week, I think, and we look to continue it. And the fact that we're having this conversation the week immediately after was a was really based on the interest about continuing along this discussion, as there's more to learn about the book. For those that weren't here last week, we went through the first part of the book, which was really about how the Dean family, and in particular Mr. Mahmoudine, who was the inventor and creator of doubles, and he created doubles in 1936. Um, so you know the Badru obviously is his one of his kids, um, and we went through um, the fact that how he sold the first place was he first place he sold was in Princestown in the square, which is actually triangle if I remember correctly, and he in turn got his brothers-in-laws, the Ali family, Asghar and Chot Ali, um, into the business because at the time they were unemployed. They used to sell charcoal from the from the animal drawn carts to people, but the access to the land was cut off by the owner. So his brother-in-laws were out of work, and so to help them and ultimately to help Mahmoudine's sisters, um, he invited them into the business. Also, um, Badru's mom, Rasulan, she was pregnant at the time with her first pregnancy, and so she needed help as well. So what happened is that the sisters helped in the kitchen, and their two husbands, his brother-in-laws, actually went out on the road and sold doubles along with Badru in different locations. The one brother, Asghar Ali, sold in San Fernando, and that's where many of us would know the Ali name from. The other brother, Chot Ali, he remained in Princestown, which was maybe the first set of friction between that side of the Alis and the Mahmoudine family. Ultimately, Badru's book details how, despite the claims by the Chot side of the family of them being inventors or creators of doubles, or them not refuting other people's reporting, that they didn't refute it very vigorously. But his book details how, in fact, his father, Mahmoudine, was the creator, and that the Ali family uh, only got into the business because of his good graces. Um, that's a very short summary of what we did, and I would ask if anybody wants to add anything to that summary.
Roger, let us continue moving forward. I will provide a summary towards the end.
Okay.
So I could re-emphasize that. So just keep moving along.
Sure. So DP, I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay. You can do that.
Thank you. All right. So that was the beginning of the book there. And just to let you guys know, I myself might I've had a little procedure like I mentioned last week. I was going for today, so I'm not feeling too bad right now. But if I do feel like I a little bit too much, Dennis will be prepared to take over, right? So let me find out where we were. I think it was slide 19, right, Dennis? There we go. Okay. There we go. All right. Oh, that's not what we want. Sorry. I will get us to the right point shortly.
Yeah.
Okay. So this section is about the Dean family life. And first of all, where the family lived, remember that all three families, Mahmoudin family, Askar Ali's family, and Shot Ali's family, they all bought a property where they were next to each other. So this where they lived was referred to as Happy Hill because they had these three families and they had 22 kids in there. And as some of you guys would know about, they had their toys with trains made out of sardine tins and corned beef tins, and they would do zwill and kites, cricket, all the things that you guys would have, some of you would have been aware of. However, in that arrangement, and particularly with Indian families, alcohol and domestic abuse were quite commonplace. Badru speculates in his book that this was because when the indentured laborers came over from India, there was a disparity in the number of men versus women, not more men than women. So then those who had women, they were very insecure, who had wives, etc., were very insecure about it. And the others that didn't were very jealous. So this led to a domestic abuse, among other things. And as well, indentureship typically denied the indentured laborers any self-pride, and they too were subject to physical beatings, working for the colonial masters. This then was transferred to the women and children, and alcohol was then just a catalyst for this destruction and traumatization of the family life. So the other thing too is, these people worked in the cane, and one of the fruits of their labor was rum. And so, hey, you got to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So
Roger, let
rum.
let me interject a little here.
Yes.
For those of you on on the forum, I'm sure you must have read where the treatment to the American Indians and so on, and Canadian Native Indians had a similar experience where alcohol was introduced to them. It seems to keep them in a perpetual state of slumber, and then you can dominate them even more. Is that something that some of you have experienced or know about in Canada, United States, and in the United States?
With the Indians, it was a little more complicated because they're lacking a gene which allows for the liver to metabolize the alcohol. So what happened with them was that the more alcohol they drank, they got drunk to the extent of like being crazy because the body wasn't metabolizing the alcohol. So they got like supremely drunk because the alcohol kept building up in the system. And there's a problem with them even today.
Yeah, one more point, if I may. We had a discussion some time ago about
Roger, can you fix where the speaker is being shown on the
where the speaker is being shown?
On your view, Badru, there's a gallery view, and you can pick several choices there.
To the top right, you should see an icon that says view, and you can switch between gallery view and speaker's view.
I'm seeing view, standard, side-by-side gallery, side-by-side gallery.
Yeah, choose gallery and you'll see all of us, I believe.
Yeah.
No, but last week, I think Dennison pointed out, and the person who speaks, his picture comes up on the side.
Yeah, so choose side-by-side speaker.
You know what can help, Badru? I can stop sharing my screen momentarily. right?
No,
then
it's
you-
okay. No, it's okay. Yeah, because I didn't see who was talking. Was it the doctor who was talking just now?
Dr. DePisa.
Oh, no, about the
that was
biological
Una.
reasons.
No, that was
That was-
Peter Khan.
Una.
Yeah, his name comes up as owner, but it's Peter Khan.
Oh, okay.
Hey, cousin.
But Peter, were you talking of the native Indians that have that gene missing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not missing among Indians in Trinidad.
No,
We can't handle
Indians.
both.
No,
Indian
no.
title is something given to, they're not Indians. They're
Yeah. West Indians and East Indians, I guess, you
Yeah.
know,
different.
Yeah.
it's no much. But in any
Before-
case, what we were talking about coming.
Roger?
Yeah.
Roger, sorry, before you go to that, one personal comment about that gene thing. I am of mixed heritage, Indian and Chinese, and I have the lack of that enzyme that to break down the alcohol. So I get drunk, sick drunk. If I mix drinks, if I have 2 or more beers,
If you just watch the bottle.
What's that?
If you just watch the bottle.
Yeah. Okay, over to you, Roger.
Yeah, but in the presentation that I had made about the African experience in the Caribbean and on the continent, you all will recall that, you know, Canada had become involved in the whole slavery process by providing saltfish
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
cod from Newfoundland to a lot of the plantations in the Caribbean. Okay, they were exchanging that for alcohol, which, as Khalid had pointed out, was being funneled to the native indigenous people here. So that's where that connection is.
And
Okay,
it's-
so I just wanted to point that out.
And it's known as led to screech, what they call screech in Newfoundland, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start back sharing my screen. Yeah. All right. So yes, the rum, and rum was cheap, so and plentiful. So your boys, Mahmoudine, Chot, and Askar became good drinking buddies, living close together. Unfortunately, again, some of the shadier side of Chot's character came out, and in one particular case, he was inappropriate with one of Mahmoudine's children, girl children, and one of the twins, the oldest boys, attempted to intervene, but Chot, being much bigger, grabbed him by the scrota and wouldn't let him go. Obviously, a lot of pain, and Mahmoudine had to intervene and threw Chot out the house. On his way out, being thrown out the house, he cut his hand on some galvanized thing that was used for collecting water. Next thing you know, Chot come back, and he came back with a cutlass to fight Mahmoudine. Fortunately, the family locked the doors and held back Mahmoudine. Otherwise, somehow they would have been murdered in Fairfield on that night.
Yep.
Oops, what's happening there? Sorry. I'm trying to go in the right direction. All right. So another instance where domestic abuse took place was Rasulan went out with the kids and went to visit family, but she left no food for her father-in-law, for Mahmoudine's father, Bombay. When Bombay complained and Rasulan returned home, Mahmoudine beat her, and with his father's supervising. Such was the domestic abuse of the day. Rasulan, after the beating, she got up the courage and she threw Bombay out the house. Sadly, the daughters of Mahmoudine and Rasulan all lived this cycle of abuse. However, you know, these women, they didn't have much leverage, and they knew that, listen, they might have been illiterate, but they lived for their children, and an abusive marriage at that time was better than going out into the harsher world by themselves. Now, I know this particular topic shared by Badru in the book must have been very difficult for him to write about, you know. So much kudos to Badru for doing this and putting this out here, right?
I must tell you that a journalist from Trinidad I met at the Consul General's home in Miami one evening said to me, and he did not read the book yet, but yet he was brave enough to make these comments. And he said, you know, you have belittled the Indian existence by writing about the domestic abuse between in your family. And I said, well, if you read the book, you will see a different story of Mahmudin. He was a freedom fighter. He fought his way out of the plantations. He fought his way eventually after being a violent person domestically to quit on his own without any professional help his alcoholic vice and smoking. After 25 years of addiction, this man, without any professional help, quit cold turkey. So here we are seeing a man who is a freedom fighter who can even overcome something like domestic violence. And you have to read the whole story to find out. But people are very sensitive to that. They said, "Why you're telling the world that the Indian husband beats on his wife or something like that?" That's we know that to be a fact in many instances, and nobody was brave enough, or was it naive that I exposed it. I said, we have to embrace this kind of vulnerability to move on and improve and liberate ourselves.
Very good. Yeah.
And to that, Badru, within recent times, it has come to known to all of us because there is abuse in almost every race, every nationality. There is domestic abuse, right?
Absolutely.
And not only is the male to the female, but we also have records of the female beating the man as well.
True.
So, I mean, yes, it's a shameful thing and people refuse to talk about it for many, many years, but it's out there, right?
Absolutely. It's a stigma they don't want to deal with. You know?
And it shows you how much of a stigma it is that in you wrote this book, Badru, I think it was around 2010 or so, right? And
published in 2013.
2013.
Yeah.
And the feedback you were getting, it was still hard for your family to come to grips with something that happened in 1940s and 50s, you know.
Absolutely.
60, 70 years ago. And that is the stigma that is still with this thing, and it's hidden under the rug and nobody wants to talk about it, right?
Right.
Well, the important thing though is that you talked about it, you wrote about it, and the people who live there, who read in the book, know that what you wrote about is true, and it was rampant throughout the society, right?
Correct.
So,
yeah, and a wife was no more than property. And I think Badru may have even mentioned this in the book, or maybe referenced it. But you know, just like indentured laborers were property, right?
Yes.
Wives and children became property of the husbands who were the property of the colonial masters, right?
Yes.
Circle, right?
Yes, and the husband will always can proclaim, that is my wife. I can beat her if I want to.
That's
Can
right.
you believe that?
Yeah.
Incredible.
All right. I'll share my screen back again. So another instance where there was some domestic abuse, but with the kids, Habil, Kabil, and Sabil, which was the half brother, they got into mischief and they melted the lead out of the batteries, out of the car batteries, and they made shots for their slingshot, and they went and shot one of their shots, took out the eye of the neighbor cow. So when the neighbor came to complain, Mahmoudine, who was drunk already, gave them the flogging of their lives, mixed like fire. And then on top of that, he hogtied all 3 boys from the rafters of whatever shed he had and that sort of stuff. Now,
Mr. Ahmad, how a
Yes.
Muslim know how to tie hog?
Good one.
I only reported it, boys. Badru right now. Now, Badru mentioned that I think his couple of, was it sisters and brother tried valiantly to take the weight off of the boys.
Yes, by pushing them up a bit. Yes.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Raslan, the mom, she did not intervene because she might have faced the same or worse abuse if she tried to intervene on behalf of her kids, right?
But the most insensitive part of it was he tied them there after beating them and went back drinking with Chot and Askar, his brothers-in-law.
Crazy.
It's amazing
Yeah.
reactions. I spoke in terms of having a father who was not demonstrative with his love. And I grew up not knowing and hearing the words, I love you, expressed in my family or to me or to any one of us. And when I was leaving Trinidad in 1968 to go to Canada, was the first time I recall my father hugging me and giving me his blessings for the trip abroad. You know, so it's a kind of a regimented family discipline situation where the boys, for example, Habil and Kabil, the twins, they had no self-determined choice to do what they wanted. The father said, you're going to be doubles boys. You know, he saw his 6 sons are going to be in the doubles empire he envisioned. He was probably right in envisioning that, but to an extent, most of them, until my situation and a younger brother of mine decided, no, we want to think outside of the doubles box.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, for your father, he was able to envision himself outside of the working for the sugar cane estates and that sort of stuff, right? But
Yes.
then he didn't necessarily was able to see that there was something more beyond the doubles. He got consumed in that, right?
yes.
Another instance that Badru touches on in his book is the situation with child marriages. And his older sister, Subrata, she was a bright girl, was doing well in school, I believe, in elementary
Yes.
school and stuff. And you know, I never put 2 and 2 together until I read it in Badru's book. But she, at 13 years old, a marriage was arranged to a 16-year-old boy, and they hadn't met each other. This was arranged by the parents. But one of the reasons for this child marriages was that the shame and stigma associated with unwanted pregnancy. This was the solution to avoid shame and stigma, or the chance of shame and stigma of unwanted pregnancies. Marry the girl child off at puberty, so that, you know, if she has a child, then it's within marriage, right? And
Yes.
and what the way it was thought they were thinking, and what a convoluted solution to what they perceived as a problem.
But surprisingly, that system exists in most, should I call it primitive, in quotes, primitive societies. In India, that still happens.
Yeah.
They marry the girls out really fast for other reasons too. It becomes an economic burden to keep them. to let the other family take care and so on.
Right.
But we experience remnants of that culture, I think, in that respect, to marry them off early.
Right. And as a result of that, I mean, although Subratan was bright in school, she had no opportunity to continue education because her role was in the kitchen, you know, childbearing, you know, and barefoot, right?
Absolutely. And of course, following the role model of her mother. That's what the mother did, and that's what the mother knows. And they are conditioned to think that that is the way a wife is to be treated, is to think, is to, you know, focus only on the children and not on yourself. So in interesting social dynamics that I raised. I talked quite a bit of these stigmas and got some verbal blows for it, but I think to change, we have to address it.
Yeah. And this was the thing, you know, when I was reading the book and I got to the part where Badru debunked the usurpers to the claim of creating doubles. So well, what's next to read in this book? I still had about about half the book left to go. And then Badru started talking about these things about domestic abuse, child marriages and stuff. And I said, wow, this is more than just about doubles, you know?
It certainly is. I was told before I wrote the book, I took creative writing lessons and things like that. They said, if you're going to write a book about a food product, you just can't talk about recipes and so on. That's very boring. Weave the story around other social issues and things like that. And it has more impact. So indirectly, you find out about the origin of doubles, yet the story continues.
Yes, very much so. So here's a photo of Mahmoudine with the author Badru on the left and Shamal on the right, 1958.
What is interesting in that picture, what is interesting in that photo is this was when we moved to Sao from Princeton after the boys died. Remember, after Habil and Kabil died, within 1 year, we abandoned the homestead, left the house, and what is it? I will digress a little bit and come back to the picture. But since 1957, Denison, you could be a witness of that because you must pass in front of that property to go to Matilda.
Yes.
The property
Mother,
was
switch off
never,
Mother,
nobody lived on that property because what happened? The twin boys died on that property. My sister's first child, after we moved out, and my brother-in-law and my sister Hamidan moved there to try to sell doubles in Princeton. Their first child was born, stillborn. Then when they left, they rented the property to a couple who murdered his wife. And superstition has it on that property that it is blighted and all kinds of superstitious beliefs. And to this day, as a matter of fact, this morning I spoke to the Princeton guys might know a fellow named Azad Ali on High Street there near to Satar in Princeton. And he said there is some development taking place now. There's a front-end loader digging the place up. So finally, after 1957, somebody's brave enough to go and live there without any superstitious beliefs. So getting back to that picture, when we left and Princeton, I was about 12 years old, and we moved to Sao, and we still had that house empty. And my father took us, my younger brother and me, and to go and check on the house. And that's when he took this picture in San Fernando at Chong Studio. Who knows Chong Studio?
Yes, at the bottom of
Chong
Lord
Studio
Street.
on Mukarapo Street.
Or
Yes,
one of those
yes.
places.
So, but what we are seeing, when we entered the village, people were saying, boy, look, Habil and Kabil came back. Because we were almost the same size and age, 1 year different. And I think Mahmoudine was reliving the joy of his twin sons with us. And luckily he had 9 children, so he could do that. I only have 2. If that happened to me, oh my God.
Yeah.
How did it die, if I may ask?
We have a little.
That's a good question, because nowadays we talk about pandemic. In 1956 and 57, there was an Asian flu pandemic.
Okay.
They didn't call it pandemic then. People were just dropping and dying, and nobody knew or something. So the first one, Habil, got this flu or something and just up and died. So then the second one got sick also, but he pined away. He used to look in the mirror and sing to himself as if he was singing to his brother, because they were identical twins. So he would see himself, he sees his brother in himself. And that he could have also died from the Asian flu that was the pandemic at that time.
Yeah. Okay, we'll look at some more pictures here. Let's see. So that was Mahmoudine. He was a big strapping guy, is one thing you could tell. Right?
He was a big and a strong man, riding that freight bike with that load, that cargo of doubles, made him a strong man.
Right. And this is a later picture, of course, of the surviving siblings in 1997, and you can see Badru on the second from the right there, and the other sisters and brothers, right?
Yes, from the left is Shamal. That's the guy who had his Dean's restaurant in Winnipeg, Canada for 27 years and taught the white people of the prairies to eat doubles with knife and fork. And my sister, she's the oldest living now. She's 81, next to him. And then my other sister, Sham, who was like the mother to the 3 of us in domestic duties and so on, wash our clothes, iron our clothes, fix our lunches to go to school and things like that, while my mother was preoccupied in the doubles kitchen. And to the extreme right is, with the hat, is my youngest brother, Idul. He lives in Winnipeg now. And the joke is that I invited him to live in Winnipeg, and I left the damn coal and left him there. With
Nice.
And it's over 50 years he's been there now.
Yeah. What a brother. And this is a picture of Subratan, who was not obviously in that picture in 1997.
Right.
And
This is Subratan, the child bride.
Mhm.
And I went into great detail in describing the innocence of a child getting married and not having the ability to question, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other thing. And then this is your half brother Hollis, or Sabil.
Sabil, yes.
Yeah.
The story, Denison will be able to acknowledge or verify some of this, what I'm saying. The story about Hollis and his wife, Tara. Now, Hollis fell in love with a girl named Tara from Matilda. That is the village from Denison, where Denison hails from. But her father was a staunch Hindu. And they know that Mahmoudine was a Muslim, therefore, even if it's his love child, would be a Muslim also. The one story type of stereotypes. So they thought he was a Muslim, but he was raised by his mother as a Christian. And his name was Joseph. They took the mother's name as Hollis Joseph, who was a Christian. But he went to approach Tara's father in Matilda for her hand in marriage. And he chased him out of there. And so Hollis came to my father and says, go and talk to the man. I want to get married to his daughter. So my father took 2 or 3 taxis from Sao to go to Matilda. And when he reached there, Jatan Singh was the guy's name. He says, I don't want any Madinga in my yard. Get out of here. And he kicked out my father. So Madinga was used for Muslims or something. It's a derogatory name for Muslims. And as a result, love conquered all. Hollis decided to elope Tara and took her to our aunt in San Fernando. And when her father couldn't do anything, one of the uncles went and found her, bring them back, got them married, and then he finally became the favorite son-in-law to the man, which always happens. So that's a love story that I just recently attended Tara's funeral. I was the master of ceremonies there, and related that story, and also to say that love story will now be in perpetuity for all to read and see how the power of love over it transcends religions, you know.
Right. Badru, I had meant to look it up, and I know the term loosely, Madinga, but what does it mean? How insulting is it?
If I might interject, a lot of people who came from Africa were in fact Muslim.
Yes.
In fact, most of the Mandingos
Yes.
were in fact Muslim. Okay. So the connotation with Mandinga and Mandingo is clear.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's from.
Yes.
There's another word also associated that is used in Trinidad a lot. When you call someone a Nimakaram as an insult. The thing about it is that the Makarams, that's how they were called when the slaves were taken to India. Remember, there were different slave trades, and they were considered the lowest of the lowest, and the term Makaram is used in that sense. So it has an African origin to it also. It comes from India, referring to the slaves that were in there. They were the lowest of the low.
Well, I heard a different interpretation and meaning of that word Nimakaram. Namak is salt.
Salt.
Right? Namak and haram is not halal. In Muslim, you have halal and haram. So haram is not kosher, for example, in the Jewish thing. So when somebody is referred to as a Nimakaram, the meaning that I understood is you're an ungrateful person.
But I was looking at a program the other day, and in some parts of East Africa, okay, salt mining is quite prevalent. You see, and we know that the Arabic slave trade lasted for 1,000 years longer than what happened on the Atlantic side. And people were taken up to Europe, people were taken to South Africa, and people were also taken to Asia. Right? Mm-hmm. So whatever referred to salt could also refer to a lot of those people who were salt, miners, right, on the continent, on the eastern side.
It's a fun.
Yeah, but I could see the connotation. Yeah.
You guys go ahead.
But the word gained popularity in Trinidad
recently
through Basi Pandey, which is one of his weapon words.
Yes, correct. I was about to say that.
Yeah, and the word Nimakaram is used in Trinidad parlance to mean an ungrateful SOB. So Badru will say, Chot was an Nimakaram.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, and
that word has reached in Parliament.
When we moved to Golconda,
Peter, get a little closer to your mic, brother.
When we moved to Golconda, I don't know, Ian, you used to live in Golconda. You know, they had a crazy guy called Grant. Used to be all over the place, setting fires, bushfires.
Water Corporal. That is the pundit that on the hill by Sharma and Water Corporal.
Yeah. You know, Sharma
Yeah.
died. He died in Miami. Anyway, Grant, when we
Yeah.
moved up there, Grant used to come up to our house because we had a little trace running up to our house and cuss out my father, your mandinga, so and so. So when you say mandinga, it just brought back that memory.
Yeah, but you know, that old guy used to come by my father's shop in Cottage Road Junction
Yeah.
and pick up all the bottles of them and bring it, and we would exchange it for money, and you'll buy coffee and boil a pot of coffee side the road and all that. Very colorful guy.
Yeah. He was the brother to Sharma's father.
Yeah, the pundit.
Yeah. Well, the pundit was Raja was the grandfather.
He was living right behind the big house.
Yeah, right. That boy up there now. Sorry, I'm going off topic a little bit. They're living in Oakville, the sons.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, sorry.
No worries. It's incredible how we as the human race tend to try to distinguish us from other people and actually try to put them down. So that's
Govind put a really good explanation of it in the chat there, and in India it does mean disloyal or ungrateful. But I love the description. If you take a look at the chat, thanks, Govind.
Yes.
All right.
But I'd like to know from Badru, going to Canada in 1968.
Yes.
Leaving country and going all the way across the waters. What was that? What was that about?
There's a slide or two that speak to that, but you know what?
Okay.
Badru, go ahead and do it here. That way we'll save time. We'll give you more opportunity to talk to it. You know.
Well, I wrote in detail about my job in the Treasury and Ministry of Finance, and what I describe as the hierarchy of skin pigmentation in the bureaucracy of the government offices, and where you see the whites or near whites, there's Jean Charles. That's a French name. Jean Charles was the controller. He was white, like, and coming down the hierarchy, you would see different shades. The pigmentation, the darkest pigmentation was at the lower rung of the ladder in that corporate life. And you start seeing dead ends, you know, and other experiences, and plus the fact that I wanted to escape the stigma that was imposed upon me as the son of a doubles man. I wanted to do anything to get out of that stereotype, because there's forgot her name, an African writer who spoke extensively about the one story that people have. The one story that people have to stereotype me and my family was, you're doubles. You had, we were considered boiled chana grains with no chance to sprout. We should, and to some way, in some ways, agreeing with my father's vision that we were intended to be doubles men. But once I went to high school, and you realize that you don't go to school to become a doubles man. So there was that dichotomy of interest there now. So there are many things that I could relate. I applied for a scholarship to, I was fascinated by reading a book about the Maori Indians in New Zealand. I even fantasized of marrying a Maori woman. So a scholarship came for published about Australia and New Zealand. I applied for it and never got even a response to it. So I found myself invisible. And like I wrote, I left Trinidad where I was an invisible minority. to choose a white man's country where I will be a visible minority. In other words, I was choosing my discriminators. And also, by going to Canada, I know that my background will not be a burden to carry because I understood and I read about it, that this was a country based on merit. And I experienced that. They chose me because of my merit at the time. So leaving Trinidad was a bittersweet moment. I compare it to our ancestors who left Trinidad and became indentured laborers. And some of them, after their indentureship terminated, returned to India only to be rejected by their communities who, for superstitious reasons, believe that they crossed the Kalapani, which is the black waters of the ocean, and as a result, they were blighted people or something to that effect. But superstition is very powerful. Joseph Campbell wrote about the power of myth, and here's an example of how powerful that myth was. And they had to return back to be re-indented in some of the islands in Fiji, Guyana, Trinidad, and so on. So I might be digressing a little there, Ian, but it was one of the things was my wife, before we got married, decided she wants to go to Winnipeg where her sister was living and her brother was a PhD student in psychology, clinical psychology. So that was her contact.
Those days,
Yeah, and I was in love with this girl and she's telling me about going away to study. So I said, this is a rejection here, boy. So I said, well, if you go to Winnipeg, I'll be on that same plane. So said, so done. Because when the parents realized that I was going to go to Winnipeg also, they said, well, if we are trying to avoid them getting married here, what's going to happen when we have no control in Winnipeg? So they agreed and we got married. And then we left 1 month after to Winnipeg. So I was on an extended honeymoon for 10 years in Winnipeg and Regina, Saskatchewan, and so on. And I'm glad 53 years ago that I made that decision to go to Canada. But Grace, my wife, was the catalyst that my love for her propelled everything.
Excellent. Excellent.
What was
Yeah.
that about? I heard something about vagina or something like that.
No,
Regina.
Almost, vagina, but with an R.
Ask Dr. Dave.
oh my God.
So
So-
now might be a good time for me to ask you a question, Badru.
Please.
I'll preface it with a little preamble to the boys, right? Imagine that your life is a movie. Which parts of it would you pick out to include in a book? What would you celebrate? What would you emphasize? What would you share with pride and joy? What will cause you shame and sorrow and dishonor? Our featured author, Mr. Badruddin, made all of these choices in his book. Badru, do you think that with all the drama you put with the historical facts that are here, this book could be made into a movie?
Absolutely. I spoke to a few people. As a matter of fact, throughout my book presentations in so many places, Winnipeg, New York, Miami, Toronto, Ottawa, Trinidad, I would get these comments that this is movie material. And I said, yes, I was contemplating doing it out of Bollywood, but then I'm getting feedback that they're too busy. They have so many movies that they're producing that to catch their attention is an uphill battle. So recently, someone was introducing me to a local filmmaker in Trinidad who is doing local content. And the discussion is going on. But I've had that from day one when I presented the book. This is movie material. Okay.
You know,
Thank
Badru,
you.
Govin had we had done a film review, a short film review a little while back called Doubles with Slight Pepper by Ian Harnarain, and
I know him personally, yes.
Yeah, and Govin had recommended that book, that film, and it was a short film, but what the story that you're telling is very similar. When I say similar, it's about the drama of the family, and it revolved around Doubles and stuff as well. So I can see that it wouldn't be a big leap for them to do something related to your book in the way that
movie,
they did
yes.
with that,
Absolutely,
you know.
absolutely. I spoke to Ian Harnarain also.
Mm-hmm. And he's apparently, I don't know if he still is, Govin, but he's supposedly working on a feature-length film expanding his Doubles with Slight Pepper story, right? Yeah.
Again, that needs financing. That needs people with deep pockets who want to invest in something like that. So Ian gets grants out of the Canadian government, he mentioned, and that's what he was able to do. And it came with good reviews. Sorry.
Go ahead, Larry.
There's as we're on that, there's Kamaluddin from Gasparillo, who had produced a number of Trinidad movies. One of the ones that we are all familiar with was Bacchanal Time, with All Rounder and Stokes and Hill and Beulah and all of them. So he's still around. He's in New York.
These guys have great ideas for your book, Badru, but watch them. They will want a piece of the cut, eh?
You know, I'm a manager.
All right, let's get back to the slides. The good thing is that Badru has covered some topics that we'll be able to go through a little bit quicker. And oops, that was not the right one. Let's go here. All right, the last picture on that slide was the picture of the Dean's Doubles Depot in Princestown, right?
No, that's in Santa Cruz Old Road, Sao.
That's right, sorry. Yes. So I don't know if anybody has driven by this. It still exists, right?
Yeah, it's one of excuse me, one of the roads that will take you to Maracas from Sao, from the Quasi. It's called Santa Cruz Old Road, and then the other one is Saddle Road. Well, just where the Saddle Road and the Santa Cruz Old Road meet, that it's in that vicinity that my the home that I grew up in Sao is still located.
Very good. Okay. So let's move on. So
Take care, Govin.
Sorry?
Govin was leaving, so take care.
Oh, okay. All right. So the Dean family, Mahmoudin himself was a versatile singer and self-taught musician, so much so that he played at weddings and was also the man to cook. So this man was an important man to be at a wedding. And he used to spend apparently days at Indian weddings, right? And who knows what he got up to. But anyways, he taught the twins, Habil and Kabil, how to play musical instruments, the harmonium, the dholak, the dantal, and he also taught them how to sing. So a lot of music flowed from the house on Happy Hill, right? The twins were so good, they would go to an Indian movie and they would come back and know the words to the songs immediately. I mean, it was not like you could go on YouTube and watch it 100 times and then the words is once you've seen it, you pay your money and they knew the words, right? One time Habil played solo at a wedding and he got rave reviews, but your boy Mahmoudin came back and he was jealous he destroyed the family's harmonium with the axe, and that was a very the family was in dismay and was distraught when that happened. However, months later, Mahmudin replaced the harmonium, which was a joyous thing again. And here's pictures from Badru's book of the harmonium, the dolak, and the dantal. And before, as we joined this call, Larry was showing us his dolak, and that is not as bad as it sounds, but Larry have one in the background there. and Dos was explaining how to play the dantal.
Larry have a little dolak?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the interesting thing is, it seems like music people have some kind of a genetic predisposition to play music or know music. My father was the musician. The two boys were. I became a harmonium player on my own, self-taught. My son is a percussionist, musician, and my daughter plays the flute. And my granddaughter sings like an angel. So it runs in the family.
Yeah, and you've mentioned, Badru, that there's a recording on your website of you playing the harmonium at some.
There is a famous Joey Omisil. He is out of France, actually. His parents are from Haiti. He grew up in Montreal, and then the world is really his stage. And he came to visit my son, who he's friends with, and saw the harmonium, and he says, play something. So I played the harmonium, and he fell in love with it. And he says, I want that in one of my shows, which is a jazz show in Miami. And we had an open air concert, and I said, I'm going to play only what I know. These are songs that I grew up with, I know, and you are the fancy musician, fit into this. And he plays flutes and saxophone to accompany the harmonium on that video, which was pretty amazing stuff that we did. I got compliments from people in India who said, send me more of that kind of music fusion, as we call it. On that concert, my son was playing tabla in the back, and I played the harmonium, and the other musicians played, of course, guitar and the saxophone. Joey Omisil played. It was a wonderful experience.
Very nice, very nice.
So, quick question: is the dantal an Indian instrument, or was that invented in Trinidad?
That's a very good question, Dos, because some people are claiming that it was invented in Trinidad. But my research, we went back all the way to India, where one of my friends brought back from Bihar a dantal that was made there.
Okay.
So my deduction is that it also exists in Fiji, Guyana, Suriname, and Trinidad. I doubt whether Trinidad would have invented it and influenced India to have it in Pune. And my friend has a label on it saying where it was made in India. So the dantal came from India, but our ingenuity, we used local materials and came up with a dantal. As a matter of fact, what is most interesting is we are pretty ingenious people. Somebody found that a coil spring of a Nissan or Toyota 120Y, for those who know.
Datsun 120Y.
Is it a Datsun? Datsun 120Y. The coil spring from the front. Maybe the guy took it and threw it away and he heard a sound come out of it. So what happens with that coil spring is a tempered steel. So the dantal that I took a picture of is my father's dantal that I have. And it was made from a coil spring straightened out to produce this resonating sound when you hit it with the handle. So that would have been an improvement to me in Trinidad. And it rings like a beautiful bell, you know. One of these days I will play Dantal for you guys.
Yeah, excellent.
If I may, the way that the Indians in Trinidad, when they were looking to replace the dantal, because this is all instruments from India,
Yes.
they found that, again, it was recycled materials. So looking at it, that was actually part of a carriage. So
Yes, I
those
heard that
pieces-
story where the metal poles on the bullock cart
Yes.
were taken out, and anything that resonated, and they used the horseshoe as the handle to make that noise. So it's something like that they experimented with, and on. But the concept of that percussion instrument existed in India,
Mhm.
and there's a documentary about it, and the guys in Benares, historian, were relating that story. So
It's just like,
it's just like doubles. It truly evolved out of Chanabatura, but it's different. We put our own condiments, we put our own bandana, you know, that kind of thing in Trinidad, or Moruga, scorpion pepper. They may not have that in India,
Yeah.
and on and on. So we nationalize it in many ways
Now,
based on the raw material we have to
Now-
work with.
why do you all think one end of that dantal is sharp?
That's a good question. It looked dangerous.
because
It
it
is
was.
dangerous.
I got the impression that it was used as a anchoring iron when you tie your cow out in the field, you know, and then it just morphed into a musical instrument. That's the impression I got the first time I saw one.
Interesting. But it wasn't,
Story I
because
heard though was-
when it tapers like that, if you have it blunt, you get a different sound. When it tapers to a point, you get a different sound, and the more resonating sound you get is what you want. Now the ring at the bottom that was where it's curved, if you put that on different surfaces, you get different sounds also. If it's on rubber or a carpet or on tiles, you get different resonance. So it's a very versatile, interesting. As a matter of fact, there was an Indian musician who came from India, and a singer, and I accompanied him with the dantal because he fell in love with it. He said it fills a void in the music that is not that was absent, and he found it extremely interesting. So even in India, the modern musicians and singers may not know about dantal. I took it back to India and have them make one with in brass, and didn't sound as good as this 120Y coil spring.
I have it on good authority that it was in 1923, the dantal was invented in Princestown by Peter Holder.
In 23.
Hang on,
Yeah.
you're
That's
well
the
confusing
connection.
me, you know.
You mean
Because I am sitting here wondering what the hell does know about tying cows in fields.
Yes.
And I know Peter will have no clue about that, right? He's a tough man, right?
Hey, watch now. Anyway, don't let us say anything.
Yeah,
Hey.
don't say anything, Doss.
All right.
Yeah,
Zip,
GP,
zip.
next thing you go find out is that those know how to milk cow and Peter is an Iron Man.
Anyway.
All right. So Badru, I'm going to say that we're going to try to go through these slides quickly because I feel, well, we need to talk to you some more, right? And you've filled in some of the gaps already. So I will try to do my best, fellas, to go through this quickly. We talked about Habil and Kabil. At 15 years old, Mahmudin had them out selling doubles, right? Because that was their future. And the doubles that those boys used to sell out of Mahmoudin's kitchen was so good that Chot had to wait for Habil to sell out before he could even start selling. And that ultimately led to a fight. They were both arrested by police, but I don't think anything came of it. Mahmoudin was then encouraged, rather than fight up with Chot and stuff, to sell in Sawa. This was somebody who had come down from Sawa and encouraged him to go there. Now that's 50 miles away. And you know, back in those days, that was plenty distance, right?
Oh yeah, but don't forget that for him to fight with Chot, he's fighting with his sister's husband, so it was complicated. So the guy assessed that and says, you know, let me move somewhere else, man. The country is big.
Yeah, one of many instances where Mahmoudin sacrificed himself for the benefit of others, right? So he rented a house and made his own doubles kitchen in Sawa, and he took Kabil up there with him too. And Kabil sold in Sawa the Kwezi. What? I can't say it properly. Yeah.
Kwezi.
Thank you. And this was tough work because they would work all week. They would finish noon on Sunday, and then they had to take 4 taxis to get back to Fairfield. And then they had to return Monday and start the cycle all over again. So the family time that they had was very short, like a half a day type of thing, right?
But it was the most joyous for the family to have our father and the other brother come to visit us and bring gifts and so on and candies and so we were so excited to have them back. It was in a sense a bittersweet visit because we know they had to leave again for the week.
Yeah, and much like I'm sure when you used to return from Winnipeg to Trinidad, you bring in all sorts of things for the family, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Subratan, the guy he shared married with a guy called Dude, and Mahmoudin brought them up to Sawa, and they got involved with selling up there, right? And
any able-bodied male in the family or in the proximity of the family, Mahmoudin had a plan for them. He could put them to work and sell doubles. You know, that was his full mission.
And typically they were unemployed. They didn't have any.
Yes. He was just hanging out in Rio Claro. His parents had agricultural pursuits. They had a cocoa and coffee processing plant where they would buy from the farmers and so on. And then after the season, he was unemployed. So my father put him to work, basically.
Yeah. So the one thing Mahmoudin used to do, he now went out to sell doubles in Port of Spain from Sawa. So he would ride his bike to Port of Spain, right? And the roads were not what they are today, or not even what they were when we were growing up, you know? So
one of the when he was selling in Port of Spain, and I had just gotten my job and my car working in the treasury, and there were times when I would be coming home and I see him on the streets, and we stop and he put the box into my car and then ease the load for him to ride home. You know, some people found that very poignant.
Yes. When Habil, as Mahmoudin, as Badru mentioned, Habil probably got this Asian flu. But the funny thing is, they took him up to Sawa to see a Obia man, but that didn't work. And then by the time they got him into the hospital in Port of Spain, the poor boy died. Right. Yes. That and Kabil's death later on, he died 1 year later in 1957. Same sort of thing. Now that really threw Badru's mom Rasulan into a tailspin. She was essentially had a nervous breakdown after her beautiful twin boys passed away, right?
But don't forget one point that I wrote in the book that adds to why she was so consumed with grief. These boys were the reason for her life, in a sense, because she was being ill-treated and worked by her husband. And this was the two humans that she could love, and they love her back. You know, so to lose them was losing her world, man. You know, that's all her her future was destroyed. You know.
Yeah, and you said in the book that she had a special arrangement, not arrangement, a special relationship with those two boys that you other children could never duplicate.
Absolutely, because what happened was a younger brother of my mother and a sister, and also the baby Kasim, lived with my mother for a long time, and they would call her Dide, sister, for Didi in Hindi. So for short, they would say Day. So these two boys, hearing their uncle and aunts who were approximately their age, because they kind of grew up together. You know, the children, they met because there were too many children. You find uncles and nephews being almost same age. You know? So that happened, and the boys used to listen to these brothers and sisters calling their mother Day, and they call her Day also. So those were the two children who called my mother Day when we would call them Moy or Ma, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely, as a matter of fact, the relationship was so strong that when Mahmudin got drunk, he would be jealous of them as competitors for the attention of his wife, you know.
Amazing, and she lost both of them at such young ages.
Yes, and that's why she was destroyed.
Right, and after that the death of the boys, which affected the whole family, including Mahmudin, he took the family up to Sanwa, and they basically, according to your book, they were trading the despair that they felt in Fairfield for the unknown future of living in Sanwa, and it was from sugarcane to an urban area. And they had, when they went there, they lived in close proximity to neighbors, and they had principals of schools on either side of them. And here's this illiterate Indian family surrounded by what a middle class African Trinity, right? And first time that Badruhood was called a coolie was up there, right?
Yes, my ethnic innocence was lost in Sawa.
That's right. However, Sawa didn't know the hurt of your family, that the family suffered the loss of the boys and other things. So you guys were somewhat shielded by that, insulated because of that.
Yes, I described it as carrying our grief in an invisible backpack.
Yes, yes. So, like we said, Mom, I'm just going to touch on highlights, Badru. Okay, so Mahmudin had that nervous breakdown, and this is where Subratan and Sham, your sisters, took over basically as mothers to you guys, and they were the heroes, right? And Hamidan was married, and Mahmudin gave him a bike and doubles business, but again, Chot came and squeezed him out of Princeton, even though the husband, is this the one the husband asked Chot for just to give him a chance?
Yes, he says, can you make a little less doubles? That was Chot's son, Anwar, he asked. Can you make a little less doubles so I could get a break to sell some? And they said, instead of making less, we will make more and kill the competition.
Yeah, nice good. However, in Subratan's grief, Christianity came to her rescue. A woman passing by.
In Rasulan's grief.
Oh, sorry, Rasulan, sorry. Rasulan's grief came by and started reading the Bible to her, and Sham took up reading the Bible to your mom. And the funny thing was that she was up at Mount St. Benedict, Catholic Mount St. Benedict, this Muslim woman in her urni, and she was accepted by the priest and helped by the priest as much as possible, right? And this is where we talked about Sabel and Tara, where they eloped. We talk about the term Madinga. Eventually, I think after Sabel and Tara got divorced, Tara used to sell doubles at Point of View roundabout. So I don't know if any of the guys would remember a lady there selling doubles.
Boy, Gurahu definitely will, eh?
Okay, yeah.
Up to when she was selling doubles there.
A good 10 years because she moved to Miami with her daughter for
As
many
lipstick.
years. I'm sorry?
There's a lady who sells doubles on the roundabout Point up here called Lipstick.
Don't know that.
I remember that now. My uncle telling me.
Oh, that was by not. This was done by the main gate.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I like to, who invented the double skirt and the design of the box to fit the freight bike?
Go
We
back.
spoke on that last week.
Yes.
Sorry, it did not get
it's-
knocked out last week.
Yeah, it's described in detail of how my father created that box that became
Okay.
the iconic image of doubles, that even
Doubles,
without
yeah.
the bicycle, they're still using that shape of the box because
Shape of the
its
box, yeah.
of its functionality of compartmentalizing the paper bag and the change and whatever, all included in that box.
Yeah, yeah. Dennison, you
Yeah.
wanted to talk about the timeline. Did you want to share your timeline diagram?
No, I am thinking you should finish off the book first.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to try to do that quickly. I'll
if-
skip this slide.
If we are out of time, then we will skip the timeline. Yes?
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
also, Ian, if you want a copy of the flow chart for building the box, you could talk to Badru after the movie.
I
Sure.
really would like to have a phone number to chat.
Yes.
You can reach Badru via email with, what is it, out of the doubles kitchen @gmail.com.
Here on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, Ian,
No, and I have no, I would welcome any calls you make. My phone number is 786-303-7579.
7579. Okay.
Yes.
and he
One.
uses WhatsApp news.
It's WhatsApp and it's my cell phone.
Okay, cool. It's a coincidence that the first three numbers are 786.
Why is that?
Well, that is supposed to be that three numbers represents a Muslim number.
Oh, is it? Never know
Yeah. Yeah, I Googled it, 786. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but to me it started out that means Bismillah Rahman Rahim.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
I worked with a guy from Palestine, and he told me that as well. 786 is a Muslim number.
Oh,
yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
On all of SM Jalil products, that's the first three numbers on all their products.
Oh,
wow. Right.
Oh Lord,
You
now
see how
the
many-
the
you see how
government
many
of
things-
Florida are going to change their area code.
You see how many new things we learn by coming to this chat here every Wednesday?
Absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
right.
It's so enlightening, man. That's good to
Yeah.
have this conversation.
Very good.
The thing is, now you can't move. You gotta stay there for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this next section talks about Badru and his personal life experiences and career. And so Badru, again, I will have to apologize because I think we want to move through this kind of quick because we really kind of want to talk to you more wherever possible, right? So Badru talked in his book about education and bullying. Funny enough, when he was in Sawa, he went to the Hindu school, the Gandhi Memorial Vedic School, and that was because it was closer than the Muslim school, right?
It was absolutely, but what is interesting to note is, just like how love conquers all in Tara and Hollis, here's a Muslim guy. He was more of an ethnic Muslim than a religious Muslim, because the guy drank rum and played music and wine, woman, and song kind of thing. So he's more of an ethnic Muslim, but still identified as a Muslim, sending his 3 last boys to a Hindu school. He had no qualms about that. And it was a blessing in disguise, because that was the opening for my spiritual awareness, and knowing that all religions have God, but God has no religion. And I believe in that, and I live by that.
Yeah, so that definitely was a mind expanding experience for you to go and attend that school and be alongside your Hindu brethren.
I'm really not sure what that means, but that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah.
Next slide, boy. Next slide.
anyways, yeah. So one of the things, Badru is playing the harmonium for the school choir, but then his mother gave away the harmonium because she felt it would be a distraction, and she saw what it did for his father. He was referred to as Doubles Boy or Chana Boy. You know, he had people, you know, roughing him up and thing, right? So that had its own share thing, and that's a bigger discussion about bullying and stuff, right? Nevertheless, he excelled, and even Mahmoudine was bullied because he was, you know, pushing his bike home, and somebody shot him with a slingshot and with some pointed object and caused him
with a U-shaped nail. You know those U-shaped nails that will fit in the rubber of the slingshot, and it penetrated him. And here he was with his blood flowing, pushing that bike and pedaling that bike, and the blood started to shoot out like crazy. So he got off the bike and ran the boy down, but never caught up with him.
And another instance where he was trying to shelter under the rain along with other people, and somebody there decided to pick on the Chana man, the doubles man. And
I think it was a joke. It was a joke because so the rain was falling. People were sheltering in Atwell drugstore on the eaves of that shop in the Kwesi. And this big bully, my father is holding on to the bike, and remember it's front heavy with all the load of the doubles and so on. So it's going to easily tilt. And the guy came from the back and keep pushing him into the rain, and my father will come back. Then he pushed him into the rain, to the amusement of the crowd there. And my father contemplated, he had a cutlass in the doubles box. In his compartmentalized doubles box, he had place for a cutlass.
Yeah.
And he contemplated pulling that cutlass out and finish off the guy. And then his better sense, he regained his sanity and drove off in the rain. But it's incidents like that to answer. I forgot who asked the question, why I went to Canada. Questions like that made me feel so insignificant, and I wanted something better.
Very good. All right. So Badru did go to secondary school, which was a huge thing, right? Because your father, that was a moment where your father turned away, he didn't turn away, but he agreed that you wouldn't necessarily follow the doubles path that he had laid out for you. This was a huge thing for him, right?
Absolutely, a complete turn of attitude. Maybe I try to believe that he saw, after losing the twins, he saw that maybe he should explore something else.
Right.
Yeah.
And out of that, when you came out of school, like you said, you applied for scholarships to New Zealand stuff, you heard nothing, and you were having a hard time getting a job, but your family, which was James West, he had come back from Winnipeg and he was working for the Treasury. He had got his chartered accountant or something. I remember in the book.
Yeah, he is a chartered accountant. He returned to Trinidad and was serving the time that was required for scholarship winners to repay back the government. And it was my mother. This James West is a cousin of my mother. And my mother got to him and said, find a job for the boy. And she put the pressure on him, and he agreed and went on and led me through the Red House, where he was like a resident of that place with such calm and cool acceptance for him. But for me, that was foreign territory.
And he was of mixed race, so he
Yes,
passed
absolutely.
as a no,
He was a French Creole, yes.
right, and nobody really recognized him as an Indian too much.
No, no, no.
But here he was an Indian incognito, and he spoke fluent Hindi. And
Yes.
due to him, you were able to get a job there and earning $110 a month.
Big money, boy.
big money, boy. Yeah. And
But,
one of the observations that Badru, yes, Dennis.
you should at least mention that James West went to Presentation College San Fernando, man.
Yes.
Yes, we mentioned that last week, Dennis.
Last week, yes.
Yeah, but you're right. Now, this was an important observation by Badru in that he referenced a little bit earlier when he was talking, when he was answering Ian, I think. But here was the hierarchy of skin pigmentation that he talked about in the workplace and in many other places. So there were the colonial whites, then there were French Creoles, then the Chinese. So these are the people who got the jobs first and foremost, right? Mulattoes, mixed race people, which I guess that's various mixed races, Africans. Then there were Indians who were Christians, and they would precede the other Indians, which are Muslim and Hindu Indians. So this was how things were back in the day. And majority of the low clerical staff was Africans and Indians. And that should come as probably no surprise to anybody here. All right. Badru talked about marrying Grace. And so her parents, nice house, they had car and thing. She was one of those Christian Indians, and they had status. Your boy Badru trying to impress her. Trying to impress her. He bought his first car for $2,100, a Hillman Minx.
Good car.
Hey.
I must add that the section about how I met Grace and fell in love with her and so on, I submitted in a Valentine's competition in the South Florida Writers Association, and I came out with a third prize, man.
What was the number of the car?
PH 2950. PH 2950.
My father, Hillman Binks, was PD 8451.
Oh my goodness.
Nice.
Isn't that amazing how these numbers are embedded in our memory and in our psyche, right?
Yeah.
My father had one. Can't remember the number.
I think my father had a car that was P92. It didn't have the second letter.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, Badru was afraid about confessing that he was the son of a doubles man, but Grace, that didn't affect Grace. Now, when he did go and meet the family, the future father-in-law just happened to be cleaning his shotgun, and the message was clear: why for that, right? And as Badru mentioned, Grace wanted to move to Winnipeg, and your boy was love struck, and he followed her in. They got married in '68, and 1 month later they moved to Winnipeg. And this is a very powerful statement from Badru's book. Better to be a visible minority in a white person's country than an invisible minority in his own country, right? In Canada, he did his grade 12 education. He worked with the CN Railway, and that was actually on the trains going to Vancouver through the Rockies and in Banff and all that. Eventually, he parlayed that into a waiter at the Fort Garry Hotel, and he was a sweet man, so they liked him, and he managed to fund his university education at the University of Manitoba, where he got his economics and sociology degrees.
An interesting thing, Roger, that I must interject here is in working at Hotel Fort Garry, this was a really upscale, the best hotel in the city, where the doorman will be wearing white gloves and things like that to get you in. And during my service there as a waiter, a Trinidadian guy came, sent by the government of Trinidad to learn on the job the etiquette of fine dining. And the biggest contradiction was the doubles boy. Me and my brother worked there during the time we were not attending school. We, the sons of the doubles man, had to teach this guy who was being trained as the director of the board, the tourist board. I don't need to call his name now, but he was being groomed to be a director of the tourist board and came to get hands-on service, etiquette, coaching and things like that. But the contradiction was where we were rejected as the sons of a doubles man, teaching the fine etiquette of fine dining to this person going back to Trinidad to lead the tourist board. I thought that was worth mentioning.
So Santos, we may know who it is.
You think?
No comment. Your legal team says no comment.
Because there was a guy who was in cadets with us, who was the head of the MD of the tourist board. He eventually ended up opening a hotel in Maraval, I believe, a guest house. I forget the name of the guest house, but.
Oh, I know I've enjoyed the fine dining etiquette training and so on as an officer in training, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't make the connection.
Yeah, I forget the guy's name, man. But I know he was the manager of the tourist board.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been that for a number of years.
You want me to divulge?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
His name was Winston Borrell.
Yes.
That's the man.
Yes.
That's the man. Yes.
He was a captain in the cadet force.
Yes. Winston Borrell.
Winston Borrell. Yes. See?
Lordy.
Small world.
Small world indeed. Small world.
Now we had to cut this out of the video now.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I'm sure, yeah. He went Vancouver for training.
No, I didn't say anything negative. I just made a social observation.
That's right.
How things turned.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it could have been somebody else who had to teach him that, but it's so coincidental that we were there and we were the sons of doubles men who were not supposed to know anything except doubles.
Yeah.
And I think in the book you made gracious comments, so I don't think there's anything negative.
Yeah.
No. As a matter of fact, I was complimented by the editor of the publishing company that Amazon used. She said, "I like how you described situations without blaming anybody."
Mm-hmm.
And I just state a fact of what happened. That's a social fact of a happening that is worth observing the contradictions in life,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question about your courtship of Grace, because there's some significant economic status implications there, because here you were a lowly public servant who was the son of a doubles man, courting the daughter of a big time contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to get a little more of the personal dynamics that happened there. It was obvious that you guys were in love and all of that, but it's the social dynamics that I'm concerned about and how you guys overcame that. I know about the bench
the green bench.
Yes, you gravitated to
that's
the green
when-
bench, so you know you was in like Flynn.
I was in like Flynn on the green bench. When you hit the green bench, you graduated into the arms of the Ramsing family.
Right.
But Larry, you're touching upon a very sensitive topic, and I will try to dodge a little bit. One of the expressions that we used early, when the first thing I didn't write it in those words, but the first thing that Grace's father wanted to know is, what does your father do? And here's a boy struggling with his English language to say, how do I describe what my father does? And I said, he's a market vendor. I thought vendor had some status to it. He's not a doubles man.
Right.
His interpretation of that, which I heard from my brother later on, when at first it was rejection, and then they grew to like me, like always, like Hollis or somebody. He said his father is begging for a living on the side of the streets. That's where that expression came from. And I had to win that over to become, in the end, when he was in the hospital dying, calling for me because I was so close to him and not his sons that he was calling for.
Wow.
So we turned the tables around, and that could have been a prompt to get Grace out of Trinidad also. But she wanted to go to further her studies anyway.
Yeah.
But
Hey,
yes,
Badru.
Larry, you are very perceptive in the question that you asked, and there were social dynamics that I had to overcome and use my charm, man.
Yeah, so Badru, were there also challenges with you being Muslim and she being Christian from a Hindu background?
None that I observed, because they were pretty, as we say, they were town people, and they flow with the needs of society. For example, when they realized that the children could get jobs, they made them Christians. And he used to tell, brag about to me that I am a card-carrying member of the PNM and I'm a card-carrying member of the UNC. So he's playing both sides. Similarly with religions, anything that to succeed, the guy was a strategist, you know. So yes.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll just move on here. Badru, you had your brothers move up to Winnipeg, and in fact, you mentioned they opened up Dean's Diner in Winnipeg. You got a job at Royal Bank, and I know this is very fast, not doing it justice, but we don't have a lot of time. But then you got a better job with Saskatchewan Public Service that you went across to Saskatchewan. So here you are living in the prairies. And then 1977, you're back home in Trinidad vacation, and you met the GM of Philip Morris International. He was transferring out, and he said, "Oh, well, you look like you're well qualified to take over this job." And then 6 months later, they made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and he was back to Trinidad. And here was the son of the doubles man now returning to Trinidad in a very prominent and prestigious role for Philip Morris International, who, as Badru will tell you, was the biggest consumer products company in the world at that time.
Their sales volume was, annual sales volume was greater than the GDP of Trinidad and Tobago. One company.
Right. Yeah. And we all know what Philip Morris, one of their products was cigarettes, right?
Yes.
Here's Badru and Grace. Here's Badru on the Canadian National Railway. And this is Dean's Calypso Gardens in Winnipeg. Yes. With steel band and everything. And that's your brother in the foreground facing the
Yes.
camera.
Yes.
Which one is that?
This is Shamal.
Shamal, yeah. And then later on, here's Badru returning to Trinidad, like I said, very successful. And what does Mahmoudine ask him? So, you're working for someone else? You're not your own
Yes,
boss.
that was a very poignant question. And here I am bragging about all the perks of this fancy job and thing to my, I know Dennison doesn't like to hear the word illiterate, but my illiterate father, I'm bragging about all the success that I'm coming home with. And he listened to me carefully and he was proud and he says, so you're working for somebody else. You're not your own boss. And he was his own boss.
Yeah.
And he knew what it feels like to be the master of what you control, my friend. And
this is
it
despite-
took me 10 years to realize that after my corporate life, to have my own corporation and do my own thing, and you be your own boss.
And he told you that despite the fact that Philip Morris put you up in house in Glencoe, provide you with vehicle, provide you with free trips back home to Canada.
Yes, I had home leave to Canada. It's incredible.
That's right. And children in private school and all kind of thing, right?
Yes, and flying around in corporate jets in the Caribbean, but to fly into Trinidad with corporate jet was vindication for the Kane Cutter's son of a doubles man.
That's right. But you still was working for somebody else.
Yes, boy.
In particular with that arrangement with Philip Morris, they had a licensee in Trinidad, part of the white elites, and they still had that colonial mentality, and they would take the directions from the GM who was there before, but not this boy, not Badru, because the man told
Well,
you.
I came back pretty naive. After being accepted by Philip Morris, going through 4 vice presidents in different areas of the business, and they found me qualified enough to run their licensee in Trinidad. To return to Trinidad and think that I was this hot shot, forgetting that racism still permeated that society to that extent where the guy says, we had heated discussions and so on, as you would see in the book. He says, I do not take directions from Kane Cutters, man. I said, damn.
You got it from both sides, from your father and from this one.
Yeah, why?
In the end, Philip Morris was unsuccessful in Trinidad, and in the end, the marketing, part of the big problem was that the marketing of the Philip Morris brand was they did not even consider the Indian consumer. They marginalized them. And
absolutely, and that's where the issue arose, that it became contentious, because here is a guy who in Trinidad you call him white. He was a Syrian of some sort, Middle Eastern. His distributor was Agostini Brothers, and the head of that was a local white also. Then his advertising agency was Trinity Advertising, and they were white, the Inglefields. And I am telling them that 40% of the population are Indians, and you're making an Afrocentric advertising only. So you're defeating the purpose of a national campaign. And they said, well, the Indians are misers, they don't spend, and we cater to the people who spend, and so on. And I said, man, what kind of marketing is this? My father didn't sell doubles to Africans or Indians or Chinese. He sold to hungry people. And they were missing. My father could have taught them a lesson in marketing, I think. And that became the issue, where I cannot penetrate this kind of a gatekeeper of the status quo in Trinidad mentality held by these what I like to call locally assembled whites. And it reached a point where I had to make a decision. Remember that I was employed by Philip Morris International to run the Trinidad operation, where I was born and where I grew up, and they thought as a native I would succeed there. They had no plans for me in any other areas. And I was faced with closing this licensee operation, but I had to put my job on the line. And I said, you know what, I'm young enough, I could find something to do. And if all fails, I could sell doubles. So I recommended to management in Miami that instead of, to succeed in Trinidad would be a long-term endeavor requiring millions of US dollars to be spent there to go after the giant of West Indian tobacco, Whitco, in Trinidad. And we came in with a different blended cigarette versus Whitco was selling a pure Virginia type tobacco. So there was a challenge to change the taste of the smoker. And taking all that into consideration, I saw this as a losing endeavor, and I recommended that we close the operation down. And they did. And to my surprise, and what changed my life in many ways, my vice president said, I want you in Miami. And he brought me and my family to Miami in 1980. And it shows that the pen is mightier than the sword, or the racist attitudes that can exist. And the guy, when we left and Philip Morris pulled out, he became bankrupt. So I found my vindications for the guys who are seeing me only as a cane cutter.
Right.
You know?
Right. And the cigarettes at that time that you were unable to beat out, you said was the Anchor brand?
No.
Maurier.
Oh, Du Maurier and Anchor, yes.
And
Du Maurier.
Maurier, Anchor, and Broadway.
And
Broadway.
Broadway,
Benson
yes.
Hedges.
Right. And
Yeah, those are the
Peter Can-
elite smokers.
yeah, Peter Can still smokes all three.
Plus there was a brand in Trinidad called Life. I don't know if you remember.
Life. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that was a federal tobacco brand.
The brands that Philip Morris launched there before I arrived was one called Swing. As a matter of fact, Eric Williams in his campaign or something talk about Swing because it was appealing to young people, swingers and things like that. Then they introduced Marlboro, and that didn't work either. And when I was there, I managed the launch of Mark 10, and that didn't succeed either. And West Indian Tobacco was so powerful that they would go to all the outlets in the country and buy up all the cigarettes that we distributed and took them back to their factory and incorporated them into their cigarettes just so that we would not get to sell.
what?
Swing, you're young and you're moving on. That was the catch.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice.
Was Dunhill associated with Philip Morris, or was that something else?
No, that's British American Tobacco. Dunhill is a British and British American Tobacco. I think that's where they belong.
Craveney was also British
those are
American
upscale
tobacco.
brands. Like Benson and Hedges, they're upscale brands.
Benson, the foods, Benson, the packs, the taste best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Beautiful flavor.
All right. So Badru had worked for Philip Morris for 10 years. He ended up working for Nestle for a couple of years, but then he opened his own business, Carry Trade, which was an export business. And one of the interesting things, he exported chickpeas from Canada. They were smaller than the other chickpeas from the other areas, but they cooked up to the same size. But because they were smaller, they were cheaper. They were, more. You could transport more. But the big importers in Trinidad didn't want anything to do with that for the doubles business. So himself and Shamal opened Fairfield Foods as an importer, and they imported several hundred tons, and they got it widely accepted. But then the big importers went, "Oh, well, this is good business now." Now they undercut Shamal and Badru's business because they just had the huge distribution network. And next thing you know, they got squeezed out of the China business. Right?
Now the small grain China is the doubles China in Trinidad.
Double China. Now, Roger.
Yeah.
You're pulling a DP on me there.
How that?
Is it chickpeas or China?
It's both. Is chickpeas chana
You-
garbanzo?
You know,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
my boy,
Manzo, yes.
you know, my boy DP has been very Canadianized. So you go in Canada to live and you forget it's China.
Yeah.
I think you're confusing me with somebody else.
What is
Anyhow.
interesting, and you're talking about Canada, there's the chana comes from, right now, all the chana consumed in Trinidad comes from the prairies of the Canadian prairies, Manitoba and Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
And the flour
Yes.
comes from the prairies, but from the wheat. The masala, the coriander is grown on the prairies. So in many ways, the bulk of material that you need to make doubles is like a locally assembled Canadian product with the doubles. And
Yes.
somebody, Rambarat, made that point, you know, that doubles is really a foreign product.
Yes.
It is costing us too much foreign exchange to bring this thing in.
Yeah,
You know,
another
but-
press
Yeah.
man.
So,
Yes.
so Larry,
Lawrence.
all that big stone you're pelting from down south only reaches a little, 100 yards or so before the border, yes?
Yeah.
Tell me who does use the fancy pronunciations.
Larry,
Very
stop,
well.
yes, stop it. Let me get this done. Mother.
No, but regarding the doubles, the channel, right? They use the tin channel now, mostly.
Yeah, the small grain.
No, the one in tins, rather than boil from
No,
soak and boil, they use the
that's the
tin
homemade.
channel.
That's the homemade guys who want a quick fix.
Mhm.
You use the tins, but
Yeah.
industrially, the best channel is to soak it overnight. And,
Yeah.
So one other thing, Badru happened to be in the right time at the right place in Miami when A&R Robinson, I guess at the time he was president, he needed surgery at the Eric Williams Medical Center. This was not from the gunshots, right, Badru? That's when he was prime minister. So
No,
this is
that's when he was prime minister, and he
Yeah.
had some.
and they needed this tracheotomy kit, but your boy Badru was able to secure it in Miami and send it down on the next plane to Trinidad. So there's a little sidebar piece of information.
That's my political contribution to Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes. And he chose a
And
good
this-
man to send it to.
Yeah, and this last slide here is about the legacy of Mahmoudine. Badru did spend the last 4 months of his life with Mahmoudine, and he passed away March 13th, 1979. He was 62 years old, and I mentioned last week that the man is our age when he was our age when he passed away, right? Passed away peacefully. At his funeral, Rasulan, Badru's mom said, "Now go. The boys are waiting for you." I thought that was quite poignant, right? And he's buried there in the El Socorro Muslim Cemetery. Badru's book, he states, Mahmoudine was born in a house facing the Central Range, and he died in a house facing the Northern Range. And it was what's the word we want? It represented that his ascension of the mountains of struggles in his own life to look after his family, keep them together and out of abject poverty. And throughout the book, you can see that Mahmoudine's mission in life was not about maximizing profit. Instead, he was more about charitable, giving, and altruism. And he did that for so many people, brought them into the doubles business to give them a way of life. And as the last thing in Badru's book, he finishes it with, "Yes, I am the son of a doubles man, and that's good enough for me." Thank you,
Well done,
Badru, for a wonderful book. Learned so much from it, and like I said, it was so much more than just the story of doubles. It was a commentary on culture in Trinidad of our parents and that sort of stuff. In at that time.
If I can make one comment before, the son of a doubles man, but you have made, as Roger pointed out 2 slides ago, your own contribution to the doubles business by bringing in the right grain of chana for doubles. And that is the doubles chana now. So in keeping with your father's legacy, you have made your own contribution to that.
Well, what is
Thank you.
interesting, Larry, thanks. What is interesting is, as I repeated several times, my father's ambition was to have all his sons as doubles men. He didn't get me to sell doubles, but in the end, I sold more china in volume than my father
Yeah, what is
sold
about?
in doubles for 43 years. You know, I sold hundreds of tons of china, but not in the form of doubles, you know. But so he did get me in a sense. And what was interesting is that I gravitated towards food. And, you know, when I was with Philip Morris, not only cigarettes did we sell, they owned 7-Up, they owned Kraft and things like that, Miller Brewing Company. And then with Nestle, of course, it was food again. And with my own company, other than the China, I exported from China to Haiti, bulk tomato paste, and the bottles and caps for tomato ketchup that was made locally in Haiti until the earthquake of 2010, when my containers were floating in the ocean.
What's interesting, sorry to just jump in. What's interesting to me is when I look at your life experience, is what drove your success. It seems to me that you were always trying to escape that stigma of being a doubles man son, and that drove you to the success you experience in your life. So I'm wondering if you see it like that, it's as that shame you felt as a child of being a doubles man child, and if that is what propelled you to the success that you have now.
Absolutely. That was the driving force. I was compelled to succeed in spite of my circumstances. And we never forget our origin. And it keeps, I keep reminding my kids, my son is an attorney. And when he did his own practice, he had his own practice. I said, your grandfather would be very proud of you being your own boss. And this thing, what you would have noticed in the book, that whatever I discuss, I come back to my parents to keep that thread going. And the shame, you know, it took me the writing of the book that was a catharsis for me and a healing to today be on a forum like this and live events for the book and stand up proudly to say that I am the son of a doubles man. It didn't come easy. It was shame. I was time when I was in cocktail situations, even here in Miami at the consulate. Pandey was visiting, and some of the local businessmen who I know, I will not call the names, they introduced me as, and this guy's claim to fame is doubles, and they all had a big giggle over it. And I said, shit, how could I shake this image off, man? And it took me, the question is so powerful that you ask. Is that owner? The name is coming up there. Who asked the question?
Yeah, Peter.
Peter,
It's
okay,
owner,
Peter.
but it's Peter.
Peter, your question is so powerful for me, especially because it drove me to want to be the elites who were discriminating against me in society. And when I got there, I realized it's no big deal. I was, as I said in my book, I wrote about poverty, but poverty had already written about my life.
Mm-hmm. And
you know,
that is the question I wanted to ask.
The struggle.
That's the question I wanted to ask. Is now
trying to be
at
the hierarchy of society, at the high levels of society, was always the reminder of where I came from, and I want to be up there. And then having been there, it's no big deal, man. No big deal.
Peter, your volume levels are a little low, so I don't think Badru heard your last comment there.
No, I didn't.
I'm not sure why that is, but the point I was trying to get to is now that you got in the game, you played the game, you won, and now that you won the game,
Full circle.
is there a realization that it was a stupid game to begin with, and that labor is honorable regardless of whether it's selling doubles or cutting cane or working as a CEO in a company? Is there that realization that you have come to through writing this book?
Absolutely. Yes, I came to that realization, and I I mentioned that my father was an entrepreneur, a natural entrepreneur that I had to go to school to study to be. So in many ways, I came full circle around to appreciate the impoverished background that actually made me who I am. Without that background, I would not have had the experience. I might have been given an inheritance from a rich family or something that will never have made me into the person that I am today. And the spiritual side of me may not have happened. I might have still been running after the almighty dollar, and knowing when is enough. I have come to all these realizations, and now on top of it, my son, I had a discussion with Denison, my son, who was a successful student, an A student, and had his own legal practice at a very young age. How I like to describe it is, my father abandoned the sugar plantation for doubles. I abandoned the doubles for corporate life. My son abandoned corporate life for spirituality. And that's the journey. And I'm learning from my son, and it is a well-said expression that the child is father of the man. And I am learning from my son how less is more.
Wonderful.
And so, Badru, thank you for sharing the story. Gentlemen, I put together a summary that will take 5 or 6 minutes. For those of you who want to stay on, you can. I also asked Roger DePisa to do something creative, which would take 5 or 6 minutes more. So we're looking at 10 or 12 minutes more for those of you who want to stay on. And for those of you who don't want to, I want to thank you for joining, Badru in particular. On behalf of my brethren who are on this call, I want to say thank you for accepting our invitation to join us. And this last piece is really a tribute to you, where we salute you by doing a quick summary of the book, as well as what was happening in the world at that time. And so I hope that you enjoy. Roger, I'll share my screen and then I'll let you share yours. Sounds
Okay,
good?
will do.
Okay. Okay, so gentlemen, what I'm calling this is timelines. And so I want to talk a little bit about what was happening in the world. And so, you know, when World War I took place, when World War II took place, and you know that the story that was just told was about a man who was born in 1917, his wife was born in 1920, and they raised their children during this period of time, right? Before 1927, planes couldn't fly across the Atlantic, right? The first transatlantic flight was in 27. And so this was the context of the world. Now I want to talk a little bit about the context down in Trinidad. To anchor things, World War I the Great Depression and World War II. But we know that oil was discovered in the early 1900s, and there was a trade union movement, roots of which started in this 1937 riots down in Faizabad. I also want to point out that in Trinidad, we had our first election in 1956, in which men and women were allowed to vote. In the United States, in 1956, Black people did not have the right to vote yet en masse across the United States. And women, white women, were only allowed to vote in 1920. So that was the state of the world, and here is Trinidad, right? And so in Trinidad, what I want to point out here now is that in 1917, it was the end of immigration of the Indian immigrants. And you know when you were born, right? The big point that I want to make here is that during World War II, food was rationed. And I want to ask Badru, during World War II, where did you get supplies like flour and oil and Jana?
Well, you would have to ask my father that, but we had stories of when he could not get the chana, he would take any beans, black-eyed peas, and make the curry and serve it with his rationed foods that he got. So the truth is, I cannot fully answer that question for you because I did not explore that aspect of it. But in the time of ration, Indians know how to grow things in the fields, especially in the villages, and he duplicated. For example, the chutney, when he couldn't get when mango was out of season, he would use potatoes to make. Once you put the spices in there, it gives the flavor. Some of the stories I heard, but the black-eyed peas was a substitute for. So whatever came to the island that was given in ration, he must have laid his hands on it.
Okay, and Badru, you jump in. This is the quick summary of the history of doubles now. I'm saying that Imam-ul-Din was born in Piparo in 1917. His wife was born in Fairfield, Princestown in 1920. They got married in 1936, and the doubles business started in 36 before inviting in Rasulan Ali's two brothers to join in the business so that Imam-ul-Din's two sisters' families could have been supported financially. So far,
a fine distinction would be that when they got married, it was two couples got married, and eventually within a few months, two of Mahmudin's sisters got married to two of Rasulan's brothers, the Alis. So they each took their wives to their father's homes, which was the traditional way of an extended family. So Chot and Asgar took their wives, my father's sisters, to their father's home, and in Fairfield, and Mahmudin took his wife Rasulan to his father's barrack home in Bonanza Street, Princestown. So now that's where the doubles saga started, is in Bonanza Street. And because of problems with the love child and competition with the other woman, Rasulan insisted on going back to Fairfield to be nearer to her family and her father. And that's when they moved to a property near to the corner of Fairfield Road and Naparima Mayaro Road. and bought a half a house, like Roger said, for $96. So that distinction has to be made. And also, Chotan Asgar remained living with the father for one of Asgar's sons reminded me before he passed. For 5 years, they lived with their father. So during that time, there was no Ali's doubles in 1936. They were still at their father's home with their wives. And the only time they started to be involved in it was when Mahmudin invited them to come into this business with him because he needed help with the twins, and Rasulan was pregnant with Subratan. So the two sisters came, and they came willingly because their bigger brother was asking for help. And he saw the opportunity to put his two brothers-in-law into the business to sell doubles for him. But there were no signs. So people assumed that the doubles that Ali was selling was Ali's doubles, but it came from Dean's kitchen. And you can't create something in somebody else's kitchen and take credit for it.
Okay, good. So all of these lines here are intended to show that a lot was happening in your family
Yes.
during these decades, right? And so Roger already touched on the domestic abuse, so I will leave that out. But I'll say in 51, Subratan got married. In 51, those boys like yourself were circumcised, not as babies, but as older boys. Your
Very
two,
publicly too.
okay, your two oldest brothers got their first freight bikes in 52. And Dean's doubles was taken to the Quasi in Sawa in 53 and to Port of Spain by 1954. And so this is the history of doubles and how it spread from Princestown to Port of Spain.
I think a critical point has to be made in that 1936 column. The doubles were actually created in Bonanza Street, Princestown, by my parents, and then taken to Fairfield. So that distinction should be made.
No problem.
Yes, thank you.
Now, when I send these slides to you, you could edit them yourself too, right? So
Okay, great.
But thanks for making the correction because I didn't quite get that clearly.
Mhm.
Okay, and so then it seems that after Habil and Kabil died, your family moved from Princestown to Sawa.
Yes, we abandoned the homestead property.
Okay.
It was blighted.
And so for the guys on the call, I want to invite you to think a little bit about your family story and about where your parents were in the 40s and 50s with someone like yourself who was born in 59 or 60 or 61 or 58 in that kind of time period. And if your grandparents were alive, what were they doing? And if you happen to have a parent who is still alive or aunts or uncles, finding out about this time will help you to fill gaps in your family history that could allow you to understand yourself better and pass some of that legacy and information onto your children. So I want you to make an estimate, a guess of how many doubles men there were in TNT. 36, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. And I'm going to stop sharing now. Roger De Pisa is going to entertain us with a little music video. And then I want to hear what you all think about these numbers and we'll stop the show. So Roger, take it away.
Thank you, Dennis. Are you guys seeing this screen? Okay,
yes.
it is kind of interesting, your last comment, because I would as well like to dedicate this to Radford's and my mother, who would have been around 10 years old at this time. today is 10 years to the day since she died. So, okay. All right, so here we go. Before I do this, let me share my sound so that everybody could hear. Okay, so what's going on here? Come on. There we go.
At last the hour of vengeance is at hand. I am in the land. At last the hour of vengeance is at hand. I am in the land. The Lord executed word of command. With my glittering sword in hand, tell Houdini, this is the hour of destiny in this colony. Those who boast that Houdini can sing, in my opinion, they know nothing, for it's all propaganda, deceit and pretense. He hasn't got the shadow of intelligence. The money that was spent on his slates and books has not improved his manners and looks. He has a good inclination, but poor in education in this colony. Boast of their intelligence while the audience observe their incompetence. The rattling of their tongue with the music and time cannot make a rest feel that they are sublime. Knowledge have increased, understand me well. It was written in a book that others should tell. Tell them see graduation and then approbation as a Calypsonian. From the very first day that I was born, men like Houdini started to mourn. Monarchs wept and princes cried when they saw this new star up in the sky. Astronomers in my horoscope state I'd be proud brand, illustrious and great, and the name me Attila, the terror, the brutal conqueror, master me minor.
Indians and Negroes in sugar and oil respectively was nothing short of subhuman. It was clearly a case for early rectification.
And then approbation as a Calypsonian. From the very first day that I was born, men like Houdini started to mourn. Monarchs wept and princes cried when they saw this new star up in the sky. Astronomers in my horoscope state I'd be proud brand, illustrious and great, and the name me Attila, the terror, the brutal conqueror, master me minor. The earth is trembling and crumbling and heroes are falling and all, because a lion is roaring my tongue. It's like the blast of a gun when a prong. Monarchs I want to bow down to the ground. Devastation, destruction, desolation and damnation, all these I'll inflict on insubordination, for the lion in his power is like the rock of Gibraltar.
Okay.
Very nice.
Very nice.
All right, so I was a little tribute to you, Badruddin, and your parents, because this was around the time they really started up the doubles
Yes,
story.
beautiful, wonderful compilation.
Roger Pisa, when was the Calypso from?
The Calypso was also from the 1930s. Okay, all those guys were some of the top names doing an extempo piece around that time.
Amazing,
Okay.
amazing, DP. Yeah,
And it showed that your mother was born in 1932. Was that
She
correct?
was born in 1924, so she would have
Oh.
been about 10, going into
Also,
her
Roger,
teenage years.
Roger, Daddy would have been 100 this year.
As
Oh.
yeah.
21.
Yeah.
Great
We had
job,
a,
DP, great job.
Thank
we had
you.
a nice history on the Eugene St. Marlin Sugar Factory,
Mhm.
the largest in the British Empire at that time. And
Yes.
today is all abandoned totally. And I think they might gut it out one of these days as scrap iron. It's a nice place for a museum.
This is
Definitely.
true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for a wonderful experience with so much nostalgia that it made my story relevant to you guys. I can see the passion that you have for the country that we came from. It's still here. We still call it home. But this forum brought us back together. Roger, I thank you. Dennison, I thank you. And Dave, who is not here tonight, was the catalyst that made all this happen. I thank him and all the participants who, for the 2 sessions we had. It was really delightful and enlightening. I learned quite a bit also. And I wish you all the best in continuing to have your alumni group continue with this forum and educate the people and educate us. And I'll drop in from time to time.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes.
I promise here.
Need to hear some more from you.
I just have one comment to make, please. In deference to my friend owner, Peter Kahn, but I would quote Winston Churchill. History is written by the victors. Congratulations, Badru. Excellent.
Right, yes, for sure.
I want to read you guys about the number 786. Remember that came up just now?
Yeah.
Yes.
The number 786 that many Muslims from the subcontinent used to signify in the name of Allah, the ever merciful, the ever compassionate, is derived from an ancient system of Arabic numerology called Abjad. This system of numerology has a long history dating back to the Ugarte manuscripts 1500 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. And it continues.
Okay.
Yes, I thought I should know that.
Very nice.
Great
Thank-
stuff. Very nice.
As a matter of
Thank
fact,
you,
in
Advent.
Calgary, there is a Middle Eastern restaurant that he took me to while we were working in Calgary. And the name of that restaurant was 786.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely learned something tonight about my area code.
Yeah. So Badru, I am a teacher at Barrackport East Secondary School. And I'm going to make sure that our library has the book.
Okay.
And ensure that students read it. And it will be part of my class because I'm an agri-science teacher. So I'm talking food.
Exactly correct.
So
thank you, man.
You can rest assured I'll be promoting the book and making sure the library has it and feature it as well.
And making sure that the
So as we get back
history
to
is
school.
known.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dave has a question. Go ahead, Dave.
Comment. The first one is when I wanted to get this book, I was able to get it on Kindle Unlimited. It's a service from Kindle where you can borrow books, you pay for the service. And I was able to download it on Kindle Unlimited. All right, so if anybody's interested.
Yes.
Second thing I want to say, and this is a kind of a lighthearted comment, is that after all this talk about doubles and China, I am allergic to China.
I'm sorry for you, but you know what?
Very academic for me.
You have to get the Black Eyed Peas doubles.
I want the Black Eyed.
I just started singing here whole night.
Well, lucky for you, Dave, that they're making doubles and all kind of thing now, right? They're putting meat in it, which Badru says goes against the vegan aspect of what it was originally.
I wonder if they have a jerk para, a jerk doubles.
In Jamaica, most likely.
Yeah, they might call it Jara.
There we go.
But you know, one point I want to leave you guys with is my book was a labor of love. I didn't write this book to make any money. I wrote this book so that my children would know their origin, because I didn't know my origin from India and so on. And when I see people objecting or coming up with new creators of doubles as the time goes by, it disturbs me to see that
I don't have any information about
how
that.
limited their knowledge is of the actual history of it. And this is how I hope to fill the void from an academic point of view, that the story exists within the pages of a publication, and they should go use that as a reference instead of the mauvais langue, as they call it in Trinidad, the old talk. My great grandfather created doubles. I keep hearing things like that, you know, but no proof.
Badru, let me ask you what I consider to be a fitting closing question, and it's this. Your family's story and your own personal journey documents history and serves as an inspiration for future generations. What do you hope your readers will do after reading your book?
Well, you're teaching characteristics, projecting in your questions. You have me as a student now, which I gladly accept. But what I hope to gain, the readers gain, is the truth, because when I wrote this book, I'll give you an example as a joke, but it happened in real. And going back to Trinidad to visit on one of several return visits, my friend picked me up, and on the way to Coquille, stopped in Chaguanas for doubles. And I started with the first double, and it tasted delicious. And I was asked the lady for a second double. And while she was preparing the second double, I said, "Do you know who created doubles?" And she says, "No." I said, "What if I told you it was my father?" She said, "I think you're trying to get a free double here." so that incident and that encounter with that lady solidify in my mind that this story has to be told, and people must know the origin of their iconic food. Trinidad and Tobago is not the double island of Trinidad and Tobago is now synonymous with doubles. And to people are coming to Trinidad. Andrew Zimmern from the Travel Channel, when Anthony Bourdain was alive, he was in Trinidad covering stories of doubles. And we as a people did not know and do not know the origin of our own doubles. The Travel Channel came to Trinidad because of my book, and I'm hoping that the readers of the book will come to the realization of who created it and give credit where credit is due. My mission in life is to give my illiterate parents, who saw in their wisdom to send me to get an education, that I could pay them back by giving them the credit that is due to them. And that's the total mission.
Zindagi ka safar. That's all.
Yes. I think that we will stop there. But some of you might have done your homework with this question that I give earlier. So let me show you my answer to the question. It would have been an asymptotic curve.
What you cussing for, boy?
Yeah, and remember, there are only about 10,000 teachers in Trinidad. There are only about 4,000 doctors. So if you have 10 or 12,000 doubles people now, doubles that started with one man down in Princeton in the barracks of Bonanza Street is creating employment for thousands of people. That is the only point that I want to make.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One last thing
Absolutely.
before we close. Who is Abdul? We have a new person here, Abdul. You on Abdul's iPad.
Okay, so I am going to bet that that is Wahid.
Oh,
connected
Wahid.
with
Oh,
confusion.
okay. You're very silent. How are you doing, sir?
I was trying to remember who that was from last week. I remember there was explanation, but I couldn't remember.
I'm listening to the professors around, man. I could only listen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wahid,
Okay.
thanks for joining. And gentlemen, he told us last week that he'd be in St. Lucia. So are you there today?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks for joining.
Great stuff.
Badru, I'd just like to say it was a real pleasure reading your book and actually going through it with a fine-tooth comb. You know, like I said before, it's not just about the double story, but it delves into below the surface. Sometimes our history is just kind of surface level, right? Our own history, and we dismiss our own history sometimes as not being important. But with your book, you delved into some uncomfortable truths and realities that makes, I know for myself, makes me sit up and think and relate back to things in my childhood and my parents and that sort of stuff and my grandparents, that, you know, the dynamic that might have been going on at that point in time, right? With Indian culture. And so I thank you very much for allowing us to go there and for digging into it where many would not dig into.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Roger, for doing a tremendous job in summarizing and moderating the programs for the last two times we met.
Yeah.
Good job, Roger.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Roger. Gentlemen.
Peter Khan had something, his hand up.
Sorry, just a couple things. So, Mother, just a great job. I know you had a rough day today, and for you to make the sacrifice to come out and still host and go through the whole thing, that was, thank you. And also, Badru, there's so much to your story that I feel unsatisfied. So,
You want two doubles?
Please call me anytime. I gave the number. I'll give it again if you didn't get it.
Yeah, they're recording it, so I'll be able to access it. But
Yes.
thank you for your insights and your stories. It was really wonderful. And DP and Bola and Dave for putting this together. Really great, really wonderful, and very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, gentlemen, let me wish you guys a good rest of the night and thank you for coming out. And we will see each other next week.
Yes,
God
sir.
willing.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys. Good night, guys.
Right.